Mocking the Draft, what's going on? It's 3K back in with another YouTube video. I told you I would try to get on this more often. I made you a promise. I'm delivering on it in this lovely mid-Atlantic weather we're having along the eastern seaboard here in DC. It's hot, it's humid, but I have power. So I'm thankful. I'm using it by bringing you another video. Speaking of the Atlantic Coast program preview series that I've been knocking out at Mocking the Draft, we've gotten through the ACC, reviewed every single program. I guess previewed, it's not really a review. It's a review and a preview. It's a re-preview. It's a per-review. It's your purview to re-preview the preview when you review that which you preview. Think about that. Gone through all the different programs. I had 4 major prospects in the top, let's say 10, 15. I didn't really define it those prospects that I highlighted. I had Logan Thomas for a while. I dropped him out of my kind of quote-unquote top prospects. Of those 4, Sammy Watkins is the only one that isn't draft eligible as a true sophomore wide receiver at Clemson. The other 3, all on the defensive side. You got Brandon Jenkins from Florida State. Now he's a senior. He'll have to come out this year. The other 2 are both juniors, also both cornerbacks. Xavier Rhodes, also from Florida State, and David Emerson from North Carolina State. I think that's a relatively good metaphor for the ACC. Defensive strengths, secondary strengths, and some pass rushing skills. There's just not a lot of great prospects. There's not a ton of great skill positions coming out of the ACC on the offensive side of the ball, and I think that's what got reflected ultimately by the time I got done with each individual program. There are some interesting prospects on the offensive line, not many, but you've got some interesting candidates. Ode Ibushi from Virginia, Jonathan Cooper at North Carolina. You've also got Central Henderson at Miami. Now that brings up another issue where you've got Central Henderson and Ray Armstrong, the safety from Miami, where we don't really know what the punishment is going to be for the U. Just being the U. I think just being at Miami at this point may get you dismissed from other schools that you're not even attending. It's Miami. You don't know what's going to happen with the Hurricanes. So at this point, it's difficult to expect certain things given that you don't know what's going to happen with their season. We saw this with North Carolina a couple of years ago when you had guys like Robert Quinn had to sit out, Greg Little. Now you're dealing with the case at Miami where there may be upcoming sanctions, there may be dismissals, suspensions, whatever it is. We don't know what's going to happen with them. Nevertheless, I rank them as if those things weren't going to happen. Speaking of, I've updated the full list of prospects. If you're watching this on Mocking the Draft, you can find that below in the story content. If you're watching this on YouTube, also go below, click on the story. That will send you to Mocking the Draft. Then you can go below again. Then you can click down there and get that Excel file right into your computer, and then you can read it. Because that's really all you can do with spreadsheets, is just read it or type on it. So you can read it or type on it. That's about it. Because it's a spreadsheet. So on the offensive side, you've got a couple quarterbacks who might be in play. Looks like mostly day 3 guys outside of Logan Thomas at this point. Guys like E.J. Manuel at Florida State, Bryn Renner from North Carolina, Sean Renfrey from Duke, Taj Boyd, obviously at Clemson. There are some options. Nobody's really standing out compared to what we see coming out of the SEC with guys like Aaron Murray, Tyler Wilson, guys out of the pack, insert number here, obviously with Matt Barkley, some other candidates out there. On the defensive side, there's too many prospects to name, and that's really where the ACC has brought itself to this point. Now, there's questions as to where this conference is going, both in terms of membership and identity moving forward, especially when you've got Clemson, the triumvirate we talked about earlier. But with the defenses, you've got so many teams that have so many components. You've got North Carolina. You've certainly got Florida State. You've got some of the mid-tier guys that have some prospects that can really contribute at the next level, especially in some 3-4 defenses, somebody like a Georgia Tech. I think it's going to be interesting to see how these defenses distinguish themselves from one another throughout ACC play. A team like Georgia Tech, where you've got Azan Cross, you've got Jeremiah Adeochu, you've got Virginia Tech, who I haven't really talked about much, but on the defensive side, really have some interesting defensive candidates, guys like Bruce Taylor at linebacker. How do they differentiate themselves when they face off against one another? And you get a great juxtaposition in the same game to say, okay, here's this defensive line, here's this defensive line. What am I looking at between the two? I think those are going to be some interesting matchups. So that's it. We got the Big East. Coming up next, ACC's been covered. We're going to keep knocking out these program previews as we get closer to the season. I'm 3K. You can follow me on Twitter, 3K_. Stick with us at Mocking the Draft. Subscribe on YouTube. I always get confused where I'm supposed to point, whether it's that corner or that corner. And, of course, if you're watching on MTD, it's neither. So subscribe to us on YouTube. There's more coming down the pipe. I'm 3K. More coming program preview, Mocking the Draft. Best draft coverage on the internet. Holla, 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 holla.